The parable of the light under the bushel, which follows the sower, does not have the Taurian imagery of growth and productivity, except in rather an oblique sense. But it is related to Taurus nevertheless, because in addition to its association with the earth and with agriculture, Taurus has always considered by the ancients to be connected with light. For instance, Venus rules Taurus, and Venus is phosphorus. She is the bright morning star, and she's one of the brightest orbs. In fact, she's the third brightest orb in the sky. That's one pointer to the fact that it's dealing with Taurus. Another one is the principal star of the Hyades group, situated in the eye of the bull, was called by Ptolemy Lampadias. That would be lamp, Lampadias, the torch. So you see, Jesus will be talking about light. Don't hide your light, show your light. Venus, the ruler of Taurus and the most brilliant sight in the evening and morning sky after the moon, was called by the Greeks Phos. Phos meaning light. And by the Romans Lucifer, the light bearer. So no wonder chapter 4 deals with light. To the ancient occultists, Venus was the planet of inner light, illumination. Aristophanes called it Pleias Eptesteros, the seven-starred Pleiades. So we're talking about the Pleiades now. Although he said that one of them is Panaphanes, all invisible. One of the stars of the Pleiades is hidden according to the myth. The Pleiades were the seven daughters of Atlas, who had been changed into stars by Pleione. 6 of them had been married to gods, but the 7th, Merope, had married a mortal. So her light was dim and rarely seen, all of which strikingly reflects the parable of the lamp in Mark 7:21-22. Now take note, this is very interesting because we're talking about the 7 sisters here, the Pleiades, okay? Now, you ever notice that? Subaru, that means the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. Now, when you look up at the Pleiades, they're magnificent. They look exquisite, like a jewel in the sky, and they correspond to the pineal gland, okay? Because here they are in Taurus, Pleiades. They're supposed to be more up toward here, actually, these around this area here, because Taurus rules the lower part of the head. But you will only notice 6. There are not 7, because one of them has had their lights dimmed. So let's notice what Mark chapter 4:21 has to say, shall we? He said to them, "Do you bring a lamp? Do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed." And he uses the word here, phanerothe, in Greek. And whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open, phaneron. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear. Well, as I just read before about Aristophanes, he called one of those stars the exact same word that Mark uses for the dimming of the light, which is Phanophanes. So Aristophanes called this star Phanophanes, the all-invisible. Interesting that Mark should use the exact same word for the dim star in the Pleiades. Still on the Taurus sign, we need to focus our attention on that. Of course, agricultural imagery and the parable of light. Oh, thanks, George. Yeah, beautiful. That'll help that. Good stuff. This is also in Mark, okay? He also said, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground, night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up. The seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself the soil produces grain, first the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. As soon as the grain is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come." Again he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of the seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such branches that the birds can perch in the shade." So notice the theme there of agricultural imagery, parables of growth, and these are the themes of the 4th chapter of Mark. Right on cue with Aries the first, Taurus the second. And it gets better. Mark 4:10-12. When he was done, the 12 and the others around him asked him about the parables. He told them, "The secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to those on the outside everything is said in parables, so that they may be ever seeing but never perceiving, and ever hearing but never understanding. Otherwise they might turn and be forgiven." How about Gemini? All right, so we come to Gemini. We've done Aries, Taurus, and now Gemini, the twins. What themes of Gemini do we have in the Bible in the 4th to 6th chapter of Mark? Themes of duality, man with a legion, the two-ness of Geminis, Geminians, the flow of blood and the cure of Jairus' daughter, the apostles sent out in twos, Herod's vacillation. So, and here they are, short journeys, has to do with the 3rd house of astrology. Siblings and relationships, of course. Well, that's the Geminis, and we're going to see this in the gospel. Indecision and communication. Now, I'm really just picking the choice bits here because I've got the whole thing to go through. So it's probably going to take about a half an hour, and I want to discuss many, many other themes. I don't want to just discuss the Gospel of Mark, showing that Mark starts in Aries with the baptism and Pisces with the death. Okay, the sign of the cross. So Gemini, there are a few details in the story which underline its Geminian theme. The word for the storm used by Mark is Laelaps, but Laelaps is also the name of the hound of Actaeon in Greek mythology, a name associated with the constellation Canis Major, one of the deacons of Gemini. Right? So Jesus tells the storm to cease with the word Siopa, be quiet, echoing the Spartan name for Gemini, Dosio, and the cushion upon which Jesus' head was resting along, believed to be a detail provided by Peter, echoes the headgear of the Geminian twins, or the flames of fire which were supposed to issue from their heads. So that's basically the themes of those chapters, dealing with these extrazodiacal signs. There's Gemini there, Canis Major, Canis Minor, and Lepus, the hare, which is what the 4th chapter of Mark deals with. Okay. There's also the incident of the legion, who says, "My name is Legion, and for we are many." That has to do with the the duality aspect of Geminians, okay? Let's see if there are some other points in Gemini, some good points that I want to... Okay, well, let's go to this miracle of the Jairus and the woman with the blood flow. So after he put them out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kumi, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk, and she was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to tell anyone about this and told them to give us something to eat. Well, this incident happened immediately after Jesus was touched by a woman who had a flow of blood which was for 12 years. So Jairus' daughter was 12 years old, and the other incident immediately before that had to do with 12 years, indicating a twin parable. Okay? The most obviously Geminian feature of the story of Jairus' daughter is the way in which it is told. It is the only miracle story in the Gospels which combines two quite separate elements. Neiman writes, what we have here is without precise parallel in the Gospel, an incident broken into by another incident which takes place in the middle of it. Right? In addition, however, we should consider the name Jairus, which means appropriately Jehovah enlightens, but which also bears more than a passing resemblance to the name of the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius, Sirius, the dog star, which is found in Canis Major, right? That's where Sirius is, in the dog star. One of the Geminian deacons, and whose name means the chief one, the leader. Jairus, we are told, the leader or ruler of the synagogue. And as Ptolemy reminds us, the heliacal rising of Sirius at the summer solstice presaged the beginning of the Egyptian New Year and the flooding of the Nile, thus connecting this star with the constantly menstruating woman. In addition to being a possible zodiacal reference, Mark's double use of the number 12 provides us with further evidence that we are meant to link the two females, and that this double story is not just a narrative accident. The woman with the blood flow, has been sick for 12 years. The little girl is 12 years old. The contrast between the girl and the older woman reflects two of the deacons of Gemini, Canis Major and Canis Minor. Okay, and there's also the mention of Sodom and Gomorrah, the twin cities, in Mark 6:11. Okay? Now, I have to apologise because this is sort of a little bit sort of dull and boring because it's real nitty-gritty names of stars and everything like this. And this guy's done a lot of homework, and it's a beautiful, exquisite book the way he's put it together. And he's mixed astrology with astronomy, with astrotheology, and beautiful metaphysical themes. It's just such a rich book. I wish I could just spend the whole, 4 hours on this, but I have to fly through it. In fact, I'm just going to really fly through because we've only done three of those signs, okay? But there's some real, there's some real obvious ones. Cancer is themes of nurture, the motherliness of the Cancer sign with the moon in it, food and stomach concerns, etc. Well, that's all in there. The boat is in Cancer, the boat Argo. So Argo is the ship that is up here, you see, and that is, according to the Venerable Bede, that is the Ark of Noah. And interesting that two deacons of Gemini are Canis Major and Canis Minor. The two deacons of Cancer are Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And Noah, in his boat, on top of Mount Ararat, brought in animals 2 of 2. The only place where 2 ofs occur in the whole zodiac is right here where Argo is in the constellation of Cancer. So you have Cancer here, Argo the ship, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major. In Gemini, you have Canis Major and Canis Minor, and there's the ship right there, bringing in the twos and the twos. Okay. Now I didn't make that up. You want to read the Venerable Bedes, and he was from the 6th century, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so and it also there is the incident in the Cancer sector where Jesus talks to the Syro-Phoenician woman about not giving children's food to the dogs. Well, that would be because the dogs are over here. In fact, Marcus Manilius, he mentions in this book, Marcus Manilius places one of the dogs, Procyon, in the sector of Cancer and not Gemini, as modern astrologers do. So there's the Cancer in the Gospel. Leo. Interesting. Leo. Let's have a good look at Leo, Virgo and Libra. In Leo, as I've discussed before in my astrotheology presentations, there's Cancer, there's Leo and there's Libra. On the 6th of August, which happens right about here, the middle of the hottest part of the year, on the 6th of August, the Catholic Church calls that day the Transfiguration of Jesus Christ. The 6th of August, it's the middle of Leo. It's the middle of summer. It would be, and the dog, Sirius, is behind the sun, so you've got the dog days. There's a famous painting by Raphael. This is very famous. And there's Jesus Christ at the Transfiguration, and there's his apostles there, and they saw, I think it's Moses and Elijah. Okay? So let's have a listen, let's have a look at and see how Mark ties that in with the sign of Leo. So on a journey to Caesarea Philippi, Jesus asks his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" The text goes on. They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Well, Jesus takes them to an unusually high mountain, and that's the unusually high mountain. And it says, 6 days after, in fact, I'll read that from the Bible. This is too good to be lost. Here's Mark chapter 9. So you see, he's going to be dealing with the Transfiguration and the glory. So all these themes are dealt with in Mark chapter 8 and chapter 9 in the Leo sector of the Gospel of Mark. Okay? Mark 9 verse 2. 6 days later, right, remember the 6th of August is the Transfiguration Day, and they're giving you a hint. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain where they could be alone by themselves. There, in their presence, he was transfigured. His clothes became dazzlingly white, whiter than any earthly bleacher could make them. Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. There you have it, Elijah and Moses, Peter, Andrew and James on the mountain, 6 days after he was transfigured. Well, that's the 6th of August. I mean, it's really blatant. When you know what you're looking for and you're reading the Gospels and you know the stars that are there and what they do and what they mean, you can't mistake this. There is no excuse for churchgoers to start going, "Oh yeah, but you're looking into it," and it's not. It is there. And if you're not seeing it, it's because you're not looking. Simple as that. Now, let's see if I can chug along a little bit more. Interesting. We have another similar painting by Titian around about the same time as the Raphael That's the Virgin. And the Assumption of the Virgin on the 15th of August, just a week after the Transfiguration. Wonder what's going on. Well, that would be the Sun in Leo, because he rules in Leo and he's transfigured in Leo. Virgo, I made a big mistake before, didn't I? That's Virgo, not Libra. Libra is here. Yeah, I confused you, didn't I? Virgo on the 15th of August disappears behind the Sun. That's the Assumption of the Virgin. Because on the 8th of September, over here, she gets reborn again, doesn't she? That's the Nativity, because she reappears. You see, when the Sun is in a sign, the sign disappears. You can't see it, because, well, for instance, we're in, today's the 13th of November. That's Scorpio territory. Now it's, what's the time? It's 2 o'clock. So the Sun is above us. Behind the Sun is the Scorpion. You cannot see it in November. It's gone. And so that's why the Virgin Mary ascends and then she's born again. The Nativity of the Virgin. Yeah, it's all on cue. All right, let's see what Virgo has. Virgo has teaching about humility, little children, a warning against passivity and service, because the 6th house, or Virgo, Virgoans are very service-oriented. It's the sign of service, okay? So in the Gospel, Jesus is talking about service. Serve one another, etc. If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and servant of all. So there's the theme of service. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. So that's also Virgoan themes. All right, let's move on. I know I'm going to regret taking chunks out of this because there are so many good points, but you just can't. All I can do is show you some choice bits, and if the subject interests you, I would be getting this book. It's just phenomenal. Okay, Libra. The entry of the Sun into Libra marks the autumnal equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, when day and night are equal once again. This is the midpoint of the year, the moment of equilibrium, when the forces symbolised by the day and the night are in perfect counterpoise. This has happened before, of course, when the Sun entered Aries in the springtime. But there is a difference between these opposite but complementary points. At the spring equinox, the point of poise occurs before the daylight begins to dominate. In the autumn, this is reversed, and the balance point presages the forthcoming massing of the darkness. The eternal interplay of light and darkness is symbolised in the zodiac itself, which on one level is nothing more than the yearly cycle projected on the sky. The first 6 signs then come under the dominion of daylight. The first 6 signs come under the dominion of daylight. And can be said to represent the light of individual consciousness, struggling to establish its identity. This process is associated with the Sun, the giver of light. It begins in Aries, the sign of the Sun's exaltation, and reaches its climax in Sun-ruled Leo. The signs which follow the autumnal equinox, however, are characterised by the gathering darkness and have to do with the group to which individuality has to be incorporated, if not submerged. These are social signs, which begin with Libra, the sign of the Sun's fall or depression, and which reach their point of maximum power in Aquarius, the sign in modern astrological jargon of the sign's detriment. the sun's detriment. Interesting. In ancient Egypt, Libra was associated with Ma'at, the goddess of cosmic harmony and justice, whose special task was to weigh the hearts of the dead on the scales of justice, balanced against an ostrich feather, and she is usually depicted with a feather in her headdress. Those who failed her test were heavy-hearted, those who passed, light-hearted. Among the Greeks, notably Hipparchus, Libra was eugos, the yoke, the very word used by Matthew in a passage immediately following Jesus' declaration that God has revealed the secrets of the kingdom to infants. Mark uses a word from the same root, sunzeogumi. I hope I got that right. When he writes, "What God has joined, yoked together, let no man separate." So Hipparchus called this sign the yoke, and Mark is talking about the yoke of marriage, right on cue with Libra. But there's a lot more. We're going to see that in a minute. Among the Jews, the tribe of Issachar, described in Jacob's blessing as a strong ass crouched down between two burdens, is generally associated with Libra. The glyph of Libra, what's that? That's the sun setting. Because this is a 24-hour clock too, of course. Remember on the 21st of March and September, the sun is balanced, right? It's perfectly balanced. So on that day, and only on that day, or those 2 days rather, does the sun rise at 6 a.m. and set at 6 p.m. Only on those 2 days. Okay? So 6 o'clock goes here, 12, 6 and 12. This is a daily cycle and it's a yearly cycle. And of course during the day there is more light than during the night, just like there is more light in summer than there is in winter. So those 2 cycles are described by this graph. But here, this is the middle point. This is the point where in the human body, Libra is the kidneys. So the sine wave is going through the body in the scale of the balance. You see the sun setting there? Okay, when you look at that, so that sun's signal that it sends yearly and daily, fractally goes through our body in many, many fractals. It goes through the atoms, it goes through everything. It's the same fractal. This is the wheel, this is the cycle, this is what is going on all the time, right? And the sun's telling you that. The sun tells us that in its path of the ecliptic. The ecliptic runs straight through our bodies. That's the ecliptic. So as above, so below. So when the sun is in Aries, it's in the head. When it's in Taurus, it's in this part. What does that mean? Well, it means it's giving its polarity to that part of your physical body, so it'll manifest physically. Usually Taurians have got nice strong necks. It shows in the neck. It actually shows. But it also shows with their ruling planet Venus, you know. It also shows in, you know, spiritual and psychological things too. Philosophers, many philosophers, as I showed last week in the presentation on astrology, are Taurians. Most of the famous philosophers in history are Taurian because they want to speak. You know, that's where the sun is. Geminians are in the lungs and in the arms. You see the way they use their arms, etc., etc. So that's the path of the ecliptic, and it's defining everything. Wherever the sun makes that signal fractally, which is everywhere, it defines the bodies that it gives life to. all right? And the sun and the six planets, the seven visible orbs, they are responsible for all of it. And you'll find that Mark, the Gospel of Mark, is clearly showing us beautiful encrypted wisdom about that cycle. It's clearly there. It is absolutely clearly there. Let's have a look at Libra, shall we? Now, I want to focus, this chart comes from the book, comes straight out of the book, and I want to focus on these three signs here, okay? Leo has 3 deacons, Virgo 3 deacons, Libra has 3 deacons, okay? The first one is Hydra, the fleeing serpent. Crater is the cup, the Holy Grail, that we drink from when we come down from cancer and we get intoxicated. The crater is always here. Corvus, and it's explained in the book that Corvus is also the crow, right? Sorry, the crow, the cock, the rooster. Okay. Virgo has Coma, Centaurus, the horse, Bootes, the shepherd, and Libra has Crux, the cross, the Southern Cross, the wolf of the night, and the crown. That would be the crown of thorns. So what's going on is this. Remember that point of equilibrium. There she is, the just one, balancing the day perfectly. And there's the Southern Cross, where the sun gets crucified. This is the big crucifixion, by the way. This is the one where the sun is plunged into the darker polarity. So that's big judgment. In fact, that day there is called Judgment Day by the Jews, okay? And there's a lot of other reasons why it's judgment. I mean, the Egyptians, when you die, they call it westing, because you're going down in the west, where the sun sets. And the stars, when they go beyond the horizon, they die. They're born in the east. There, they die. So, this is the place of death. Libra is always there at 6 p.m. every day, judging stars and suns. Every planetary orb is judged by the scales. You see, this is the science that we were given, the Hermetic science of the Prisca Theologia. And the priestcraft has made a mess of it, teaching literal rubbish stories about it. You know, like Humpty Dumpty's a real egg. Okay? Yeah. Sounds like a Monty Python skit, doesn't it? Yeah. So there's the crown. It's also in Libra, Corona. By the way, I'll just show you them here. Let's do this. Leo in the heart, and the main star there is Corleones. And you remember the Godfather, Corleone? Corleone is the heart of the lion, the core of the lion, Corleone. And that's the main star there in Leo, because Leo is in the heart. The sun lives in the heart, the middle kingdom, okay? The 3 planets, the masculine ones are above, and the 3 feminine ones are below here, the 3 lower chakras, okay? So when you're dealing with Leo, you've got Hydra, the serpent, the crater, the Holy Grail, the cup, and the crow. Virgo has the horse. Pay attention, because all of these 9 deacons are spelled out in the Gospel of Mark, around about the time of the sun passing through Libra, okay? Coma Bernices, with her hair. Bootes, her husband, Joseph. That's Mary, Virgin Mary and Joseph, the shepherd. He's the shepherd, but it's Joseph. And he has a red star, Arcturus. That's the bear. In the northern hemisphere, see these northern stars, the brightest star is Arcturus. All right? You see the California flag with the bear and the red star above it? That's the bear. All right? He rules the northern skies. There's the crown, Corona Borealis. That's the crown of thorns that the sun wears as it goes through Libra and gets crucified. That's the cross that he's crucified on. And the wolf, the other word for that sign is the victim. The victim is the sun. gets judged at the scales, crown of thorn, there's the cross, here is the shepherd, as you'll see, we'll go through that, etc. What happens there, in Libra, the son gets judged to go down to hell. There's the wolf there, the victim, dies on a cross, gets a crown of thorns. Before that, in the Gospel, these are the chapters. So you can see chapter 16, 14, 14, 11, 11, 14, 15, 15, 15. So it's carrying the themes around about that part of the Gospel where it would be. So the fleeing serpent is where Jesus defeats death. The cup is, he took the cup in chapter 14, verse 23. There's the cup. The son takes the cup because the son gets intoxicated now. Jesus is getting intoxicated. He takes the cup. And before the cock crows 3 times, that's mentioned in 14:30. And there's the crow on cue. Coma, the infant, the branch, the desired one. And others cut down branches. Blessed is he. So as Jesus came in procession to be crucified, they cut down branches. Well, that's the branches of Coma. Centaurus, Jesus enters Jerusalem on a colt. There's a colt here. The centaur belongs to Virgo. The centaur and the Southern Cross is right over here, okay? So they are closely connected, those 2 constellations. There's also 2 colts over here, remember? I don't know whether you remember, but there's the Asinellus Borealis and Asinellus Australis in Gemini when Jesus comes into Jerusalem to be crucified. Well, this is what he's doing. There are 4 crucifixions. But this one's the big judgment one. Okay, there's the colt that he enters. He enters on a colt. The great shepherd, I will smite the shepherd. That's in Mark 14:27. And then the cross, as I've already shown in those graphs, the cross, the victim, and the crown. These are all themes to do with crucifixion. There's some choice stuff in this book. For instance, in Capricorn, it talks about Saturday, because Saturn rules Capricorn. And it says, the Jewish Sabbath is Saturday, Saturn's day. We noted earlier that Judaism was born when the equinoctial point entered the constellation Aries. And there is no doubt that Aryan imagery of rams, goats, sheep, sacrifices and circumcision play a major role in the liturgical practices of Judaism. But the other cardinal signs, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, feature prominently in the development of Judaism. Libra, the polar opposite of Aries, the sign of covenants and law. Cancer, the sign of home and diet and mother. Capricorn, the sign of duty, service, social responsibility, and the father. See, mother, moon, Capricorn, father, Saturn. And when you do your houses, you'll find that the 4th house deals with mother, right? And the 10th house with honours and duty and service and authority and prestige and father, because Saturn is the father. You see the polarities. We have to work out the polarities in all of this to understand the science. Once you start doing that, you can navigate through all of these books. You can read the Upanishads, you can read the Eddas, whatever, and you'll know what you're talking about, man. The characters are always the same. In the Bible, the characters are always the 7 heroes. The 7 that go manifesting, the Elohim. And they manifest in the space of 12. While Libra is the sign which symbolises the law's origin. And why? Well, because Libra is always to do with judgment and law. This is law, you know, when you get your heart weighed on that scale in Libra. While Libra is in the sign which symbolises the law's origin and purpose, Capricorn symbolises its operation and enforcement, legalism. Concern for the letter of the law is therefore Capricornian. Similarly, while Christianity is a Piscean religion, it also relates clearly to the other mutable signs. Now get this, right? Christianity is saying is a Piscean religion, but it also relates to the other signs. Sagittarius, Gemini, and Virgo. How? Well, Virgo, Gemini and Sagittarius. Its emphasis on virginity and celibacy are Virgoan. Its elaborate and divisive theology is Germinian, as are the letters which constitute a good portion of the Christian scriptures, and its missionary zeal and sacerdotalism are Sagittarian. Simple as that. All right, look, there's a lot of choice stuff in here, and I'm afraid I'm just going to have to leave it, because we're going on to some more stuff. Let's have a look at some science now a little bit. Let's have a look at some S words, shall we? There's the S. We've got serpent, spiral, and sine wave, right? Now, the serpent is also a septenary. Those words are interchangeable in the mythologies. In fact, they have the same root word. And spiral also has to do with spirit. And sine wave has to do with sin, okay? These are the 6 S words that we need to nut out and understand in order to get all this. Because we've got to bring in the metaphysics, and you've got to bring in the intention of the priesthood into this science. They didn't do this to, you know, entertain themselves on the weekend. They did this so that many, many layers of wisdom would be found in their holy works. And that way they would sort out, you know, the people from the courtyard of the Gentiles, right? Gentiles basically meaning people who are not really spiritual, serious, not serious. You know, pagans, or in fact that's what they used to call pagans, and that's very derogatory because it shouldn't mean anything bad. But the Romans used to say, oh, the hillbilly pagans. Pagano meant someone who lived out in the sticks, you know, country hick. So that's why it's derogatory, but it isn't. Their worship was based on this. Those levels were put in there so that he who has ears and eyes to see would look deeper and dig deeper. That's why it's called esoteric or occult, the Prisca Theologia. Because, you know, you ain't going to just give it to someone who abuses that information. It's like you're giving, you know, a $1,000 iPhone to your 9-year-old son who's known for breaking everything you've given him, right? Well, you wouldn't do it, would you? You'd probably get a cheap phone and give it to him or something like that. So wisdom is supposed to be respected, and this is how you respect it. When you hide it and you give it to people who deserve it enough, and they did a wonderful job in doing this. This sine wave represents time, and the seven fellows that go through there, the 7 planets, 7 represents time and this represents space. You see, this is the space that they're allowed to go in. These are the Titans. And as they go, they always make these sine waves, right? And so this represents the flow of time, and that's what sin is. Sin is everything is spirals. Okay, so this spiral is not exactly 2-dimensional. It's 3-dimensional, which makes it a helix. Okay, helical. But as it does that, the spiral, it actually manifests physical bodies, and that's the spirit that it's talking about. The spirit behind the spiral, and it always is serpentary or a septenary. Okay, 7 is the number of nature. Let me just read some choice information from who is this king of glory? The spiral, the serpent, the sine wave, the sin that we're in. You see, when you get caught in time, when you're full of sine waves, you're sinning. Yeah. Yeah, because we're caught in time. That is sin, in the sine wave. It's all science. 3, 4, 7, 12 and 40 are indeed among the most sharply revelatory keys to the entire system of scriptural interpretation.